Let's continue on with some football, guys. Cleveland Browns versus the Dallas Cowboys. Deshaun Watson, it keeps getting from bad to worse. And in that game against the against the Dallas Cowboys, 24 of 45, 169 yards, a completion percentage of 53.3%, one touchdown, two interceptions, a passer rating of 51.1, followed by a QBR on a scale of 0 to 100, 13 and a half, 13.5. Um, Deshaun Watson looked cooked, and I saw Champ on Brendan from the Block's podcast. Shout out to our guy Brendan from the Block, does a great job of his podcast. Give salutes, and I echo everything Champ said. Hell, it looked so bad for Deshaun Watson. He was so cooked. A former president, he looked worse than the former president who got cooked the other night by Kamala Harris. That's how bad it was for Deshaun Watson the other night. The other day against the Dallas Cowboys. That's how bad it was. I'm sorry, but hey, if you want me to be honest, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be real. I don't care. And to make
Damn.
matters worse for Deshaun Watson,
Damn.
he was hit with another lawsuit of SA. I won't get into I think you know the initials of what it stands for. And if you read the details of that lawsuit, it's pretty disturbing. And it looks so bad for the Cleveland Browns. And meanwhile, my guy Baker Mayfield, on the other hand, in Tampa, is lighting them up. Unfortunately, to my demise against my Commanders. But hey, 24-30, almost 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. And not only for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're winning the Houston Texans because they received so much draft compensation by trading up Deshaun Watson. They have the quarterback of the future in CJ Stroud, I'm sorry. They have Will Anderson. Look at the amount of draft picks that they have, the cap space, and everything else. To your point, Champ, Cleveland did their due diligence in the offseason, $200 million with the offensive line and the weapons they surrounded Deshaun Watson. All they needed was more than quarterback play, more than competent quarterback play. And it's about as bad. Deshaun Watson looked as bad as Jeff George. That's how bad it was for Deshaun Watson. Either he looked as bad as Jeff George, either he looked as bad as our former president the other night in that presidential debate. He looked about as bad as Jay Cutler. He about it looked as bad as Jamarcus Russell, all into one. That's how bad Deshaun Watson was. He was basura in that game. And I just don't know how much Cleveland, I don't know what to tell you, but hey, you made your bed, you lay in it, you traded all these picks to get Deshaun Watson, pay him $230 million guaranteed, giving him all this amount of money. Cleveland, how do you feel now? And Baker Mayfield's getting the last laugh. Houston Texans are getting the last laugh. And you, unfortunately, still can't find a way to get the quarterback done. Hell, they probably need to call in Joe Flacco right now because we saw the job that Joe Flacco did last year. Hell, I mean, if the New York Giants are going to roll with Daniel Jones for the rest of the season, may want to try calling getting Tommy DeVito or Tommy Cutlets because that's how bad it's been for Deshaun Watson. But, Champ, I'll let you go first. The floor is yours.
Number one, I want each and every last one of y'all out there in TV land or YouTube land, I'm sorry. I want y'all to go and look at Deshaun Watson's his Instagram page and his TikTok page versus a lot of his peers. That's what I want you to look at first. And I want you to look at the contrasting difference between how he rolls on his page and how everyone else rolls. If you look at any football player's page on whether it be IG, Facebook, etc., it's always about football. Football. They working out. They doing everything they're supposed to do. You go look at Deshaun Watson's page, it's always about something else. You might see him on the bike every now and then, on the treadmill every now and then, but it's always about something else. If you look at Aaron Donald's page last year, it was always about football, him lifting weights, football, football, football. If you look at every other quarterback's page or something like that, it's about football or their families. But when you look at Deshaun Watson's page, it's always about something else. Go look at it if you don't believe me. That just goes to show you where his head is at this point. Here's my thing. Deshaun Watson strikes me as a guy that he doesn't really like football. He likes what football brings to him. The invitation to the nightclubs, the invitation to the golf course, the invitation to the events, all the comping at the nightclubs, the supermodel young lady that he has. Not to mention, all the money that they just guaranteed him. Now you have another lawsuit on your hands. And here comes the willy-nilly of it all. If you didn't name that lawsuit, that potential lawsuit, when you sign that contract, they can very well revoke that contract. So you better hope and pray that you name that person, that you name that young lady that happened to. Otherwise, you can kiss that money goodbye. And you can kiss your career goodbye. Because I'm going to just be real. And I'm just going to go here. A lot of black quarterbacks don't get a second chapter. Let me say that again. A lot of black quarterbacks throughout the NFL and its history don't get a second chapter. Look what happened to Cam Newton. A lot of them you don't get, as a black quarterback, you don't get a chance to sit in the bench. You either got to be out in front of nothing at all. So the thing is this, like I said, go name the name. Cordell Stewart. The only one that I can think of got a second chapter, and it was long-term, was Warren Moon after he left the Houston Oilers. The rest of them, it was in and out. Donovan McNabb, as good as he was for the Philadelphia Eagles, with the 5 straight NFC championship and a Super Bowl, he went to Washington. He was out of there within a year. Even the late, great Steve McNair, he was out of Baltimore in a year. As a black quarterback, you're not going to get too many second chapters. So you got to make good on that first chapter. And to your credit, you got 2 chapters. And your first chapter was better than your first one. You went from a team that had Bill O'Brien as your general manager and coach to a coach of the year, a 2-time coach of the year in Kevin Stefanski. You have Myles Garrett on your team. You have a great defense. You have a great offense. You have a hell of a lot of skill players. You have more weapons than Josh Allen. And that's saying something. Your weapons with your offense and your defense are on par with Miami's. They're right up there with them. Especially after Nick Chubb's come back. So your weapon, you don't have no excuse. You have no excuse not to succeed. When you look at a lot of quarterbacks in the past, especially black, some of them didn't. Lamar Jackson don't have the weapons that you do, and he's a 2-time MVP. He don't have the receivers that you do. He don't have the running backs that you do. So for you to go from a situation where you were in Houston to go to an even better situation where you have a hell of an offensive line, you have a hell of a plethora of receivers, you have Nick Chubb and good running backs, and you have the #1 defense in the league, you should be ashamed of yourself for squandering this opportunity. And if you really want to be honest, quiet as it kept, you're the reason why Lamar couldn't get his contract up front, because guess what? They were so flabbergasted by you. After he won the MVP. Lamar Jackson should have got that fully guaranteed contract. Not you. Just being real. Lamar Jackson earned his keep. You didn't earn anything. You did not earn it. You got a second chance, and now you're squandering it. You got one of the best defensive players in the league at the helm. Some of the best defensive players on your team. Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett got a hell of a secondary, got a hell of a defensive line, got a hell of an offensive line, got great receivers, and you can't do diddly. And you let Joe Flacco get off of his couch and outperform you, you should be ashamed of yourself. Put Lamar Jackson on that team. Watch what happens. Put Josh Allen on that team. Watch what happens. Look at what Jalen Hurts is up there doing, although he has a bit of a turnover problem. Look at what Jalen Hurts doing with his team. Took him to the Super Bowl. Might be poised to go to another one this year.
Heck, champ, you could say Jared Goff.
Jared Goff made good on his second chance. Going from a good situation to a better situation. Not too many quarterbacks leave and go to a better situation and end up being the highest paid player in history. You have the only fully guaranteed contract in NFL history, and you go squander it like that. And the thing is, it's just like I said, go look at his IG page, go look at his TikTok page, because you got to do your research on guys, you know, us being journalists. Look at his page versus his peers' page. You see a lot of the other stuff versus football. If you don't believe me, it's right there for you. You see a lot of other stuff rather than football. But for you to squander your opportunity like this, not even try to get better, I mean, and there was even issues after you got injured where you was up in the booth, up in the skybox, rather than on the sideline with your teammates after you got hurt. And then there was even some issues with your rehab coming back this summer. You have been messing up 3 ways from Sunday ever since you got to Cleveland. You should have been a model citizen at this point. You got a fully guaranteed contract and everything. You got a second chance. You should be a model citizen at this point. It shouldn't be nothing but about football. But instead, you're squandering your opportunities. You're making yourself look bad. And guess what? You couldn't hit the ground with a stick right about now. And for you to have like I said, you one of the highest paid quarterbacks. You don't have half the weapons. You have more weapons than Josh Allen. You have more weapons than Lamar Jackson. Hell, you got more weapons. Like I said, your weapons are up there on par with the Philadelphia Eagles, the Miami Dolphins, and the San Francisco 49ers. That's how much depth you have on that team. You have every reason to succeed, but yet you're squandering it. You should be ashamed. And guess what? Like I said, you better hope that you told the truth. You better pray you told the truth, because if you did not, you kiss all that money goodbye. And guess what? Look, they wanted an adult in the room, they got it, but not the kind of adult they wanted, because you're not it.
BRF.
Let me tell you, I don't think I've ever seen a fall from grace like this from a quarterback that was approaching superstar status to what Deshaun Watson is now. I don't think I've ever seen it. And I keep harking back to this. My first viral TikTok video was was after the 2020 NFL season. And I rated Deshaun Watson as the third best quarterback in the National Football League after the 2020 season. It was Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and Tom Brady were my top 5 quarterbacks after the 2020 season. And remember, Houston didn't even sniff the playoffs that year. Didn't make the playoffs that year. So to have him as the third best quarterback in the league when the Houston Texans didn't make the playoffs, that says the level that it pretty much showed how good he was that year. And for him to be where he is now, it's all mental. It's all mental. I mean, like missing that full year and then coming back and missing those first 11 games. You know, okay, I get that. I'll let you have that. But it's just, I don't know, man. It's just like something ain't right with him. It's not all there mentally. It's like I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares about the game like he needs to care about it at this point. Because the thing is you would think a guy with his potential And regardless of how anybody feels about him, you would think a guy with his level of talent being gifted this opportunity with the Cleveland Browns would go out and do something with this. He hasn't done a damn thing with this team. Hasn't done a thing with this team. And if I recall correctly, he has a winning record as the Cleveland Browns quarterback. That's the craziest part about the whole situation. He has a winning record as the Cleveland Browns quarterback, as bad as he's looked in some games. That shows the team he has around him as well. But it's astonishing how cooked he looked. It's astonishing where he was to what he is now. And it's like it's the lawsuits. I don't know what it is, but for me, I feel like it's mental. And gosh, I feel like the theme of the night with a lot of these topics have just been like they need like soul searching. He's another one. He needs to do some serious looking at himself and understand, try to figure out what he really wants from this. Because I promise you, you know how many free agent quarterbacks would kill to have the opportunity to be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns with the depth of that team. I mean, they practically got. They pretty much pulled. If you want to say it, they pulled Joe Flacco off the scrap heap last year, and this man wins comeback player of the year, playing just like a handful of games. Like, if Joe Flacco could get pulled out the scrap heap and do what he did, bro, you are a more talented quarterback than Joe Flacco. What are you doing looking this bad? You have no excuses at this point. None. You have none. And here's the crazy part, champ. He was this close to being ours. If Cleveland Browns don't throw $230 million at Deshaun Watson, he's wearing an Atlanta Falcons uniform right now. That's the only
Exactly.
reason why he's not. That's the only reason why he's not in Atlanta right now. Cleveland threw $230 million of guaranteed money at him. That's the only reason why he's not in Atlanta right now. And that's one thing Falcons fans need to realize. They're complaining about their situation. We almost had that.
Yeah.
So we need to be a little grateful and thankful. We haven't had the greatest situation in the last couple of years, but at least it's not what Cleveland's got. On top of the bad play, on top of the lawsuits, just a PR nightmare. PR nightmare. You give him
Yeah.
that type of money, and he hasn't validated you one iota. So it's just a matter of if you're Cleveland, what do you do at this point? What do
There's
you do?
nothing you can do. There's
I feel
nothing you
like
can
you're
do.
stuck. You're stuck. You're stuck. You're stuck. That's at this point it's practically dead money because it's fully guaranteed. You could do absolutely nothing with that money to be able to try to upgrade or get pieces for the rest of your team. You're stuck. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield is having the time of his life with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, looking at you, laughing to the bank and laughing hard. He won you a playoff game in Pittsburgh, nonetheless. Won you a playoff game in Pittsburgh. I'm talking about one of the worst beatdowns I've ever seen a team give another team, and he was at the forefront of that. Almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. And now he's in Tampa making $140 million for playing the best ball of his career. And now you're stuck with $230 million, giving it to a guy who you're not even sure if he really wants to play football. That's how I feel about Deshaun Watson. I don't think he knows if he wants to play, and he
Yeah.
needs to look at himself. Yeah, what's up, champ?
Let me ask you something, man, real quick. Let
Shoot
me
him,
ask
man.
both of y'all something. After you leave a situation like you did in Houston, after you leave that situation and the situations around you, your name gets cleared or what have you, charges get dropped or whatever. Don't you think it's time to do some soul searching as you walk into your new beginning, as you're getting that new contract? Because essentially, you got let off the
Bro.
hook. You got let off the
Thank
hook.
you,
Number one,
thank you,
you got let off the
thank
hook.
you.
Number one, you didn't dodge a pew pew You dodged an atomic bomb. You dodged an atomic bomb.
Champ, you would think after what he went through, you would
Yes,
think, man, there's no way. I got a brand new opportunity. I'm in a much better situation in Cleveland than I was in Houston. I have a much far better chance of competing and getting to a Super Bowl. But at this point, he shot. And there's nothing. And again, this is on Cleveland. They made their bed. They lay in it. They knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. Remember, Deshaun Watson, he could have went to other teams, exercised his no trade clause. Remember, he did have that. But Cleveland, you gave him $230 million, and you brought up the point with Baker Mayfield. They said they wanted an adult in the locker room. How do you feel about Baker Mayfield now? Because you told me before, Tampa, it all comes down to coaching. It comes down. I don't shout out to Sean McVay because for whatever reason, after Los Angeles, man, you got the best out of Baker Mayfield. And during his time in Los Angeles, you got something from Baker. The Raiders game, the Broncos game, and the Christmas game. And when you look at Deshaun right now, man, he looks bad. He is about as bad as Daniel Jones.
Man, I don't know. I don't know what he need. I don't know what he need. I don't know what he need to do at this point. I don't know what he need to do at this point. Do we need to go? I mean, do we need to pull a trunk? Do we need to go to Springfield, find some dogs, cats, or something? I don't know what he need to do.
I mean, you can argue that Daniel Jones is better because the thing is, look, Daniel Jones.
I ain't gonna go that far. I ain't gonna go that far.
Hear me out on this. At least when you talk about Daniel Jones, you can say he doesn't have a line. He doesn't have Saquon anymore. He doesn't have the only receiver that he has is Malik Neighbors. His organization is dysfunctional. His coach is good, but not great as Kevin Stefanski. And that defense has not come together as a unit yet. I can put some reasoning behind Daniel Jones being as bad as he is. I can't put no reason behind Deshaun Watson being as bad as he is. I cannot. You got a whole offensive line. Look, you got a good offensive line that can protect you. That's where it starts. You have the wide receivers, you have the backs, you have the defense. Daniel Jones has none of that. He has none of that.
I'm with you, but
the argument that at this stage, Daniel Jones has an excuse. Deshaun Watson does not.
But the reason why I'm not taking Daniel Jones over Deshaun Watson is, for me, it's a simple fact. It's the standpoint. For me, with Deshaun Watson, it's all mental. Daniel Jones, at this point in his career, you can put him in any system and he's still going to be trash.
That's still mental.
But he's garbage. He's garbage. He's garbage. He's the reason Saquon Barkley is in Philadelphia right now. Remember, the defense was on point last year and he was still garbage. He's only had one good season where you were practically carried by your running game and your defense. You won a playoff game in Minnesota. I'm not going to go that far. I feel like Daniel Jones at this point is who he is. You put him in any system, he's not a good quarterback. I'm not going to go that far to say Daniel Jones is better than Deshaun Watson. I'm not going that far. But I hear what Champ coming from. I'm not ready to say that.
BRF,
I think Daniel Jones is the worst starting quarterback in the National Football League.
BRF,
I think
if Deshaun Watson keeps having more performances like this, we may start to have a conversation. Is he starting to look much worse than Nathan Peterman?
He'll never. No, don't. I mean, he's trash, but don't do him. He's trash, but don't do him like that.
I mentioned Jeff George. I mentioned Jeff George. Did I not mention Jeff George?
Jeff, you can do that because Jeff George was at least a talent. He like see where you're coming from the mental thing. Jeff George was just, when it came to football IQ and all that other stuff, he was a child up here. He had all the physical gifts in the world, but he was a child up here when it came to the football IQ part of the game. So I'm not. Don't throw Nathan Peterman on here. No one deserves that. Now, if he keeps playing like this, we're gonna say, man, that's an insult to Nathan Peterman. If he keeps playing like that, because at least we know what Nathan Peterman is. It's just a shame how far he's fallen in 4 years. It's crazy how far he's fallen in 4 years. It's ridiculous. And I know, and a lot of it is self-inflicted. Don't get me wrong, but you would think at the very least, this new lease on life, going to Cleveland, I'd be fully focused. I'm giving them no doubt as to why you giving me this money. I'm showing you why you giving me this money. Cleveland's like, damn, we stuck with this for 4 more years. We're
Might as well
stuck
throw
with this,
Jameis into that picture. I might as well throw Jameis in the fire because if Deshaun
bro.
Watson keeps having performances like this,
Yes,
hell,
yes,
I'm throwing in Jameis in the
yes,
game.
yes.
Yeah.
He plays like this the first month of the season. I'm seriously considering starting Jameis Winston. He plays like this the first month of the year. Like, for real, I'm with you.
And not to
And if
mention
you
going from a
and if you
huge
start him
city.
and if you start Jameis Winston, I don't know how, but you better get ready to find a way to eat some of that money and trade Deshaun Watson if you start Jameis Winston in the offseason. I don't know how you gonna do it, but if you start Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson's career in Cleveland is done, dusted, wrapped.
Well, what you gonna get for Deshaun Watson? You probably ain't gonna get government cheese.
I mean,
Let me
you
tell you
may.
something. Let me tell you something. There's a team. There are teams out there that are crazy enough that will give you draft capital for Deshaun Watson. There are teams out there that are crazy enough to do it. Las Vegas Raiders. But I digress.
We see them
Anything
do
you want to
worse.
add, Champ?
My thing is this: for you to go from a large, you know what the thing is. I can understand the trappings of life getting involved with you when you go to certain cities. When you go to Atlanta, Houston, Miami, stuff like that, the trappings of life have a way of finding you. And you go, well, wait a minute. Let me rephrase that. You go find the trappings of life because guess what? They're right there for you. It's right up in your face. But for you to go from Houston to Cleveland, that is a small market. I mean, even J.R. Smith, who was, the party man in New York City. He said when he went to Cleveland, look, there's not a lot more that I can do in Cleveland. So I just concentrate a little bit more now that I'm up there than when I was in New York. I mean, that's not the trappings of life is not in Cleveland like it was in Houston. So my thing is this: you need to get yourself together because right now your head is somewhere so far that you can't even see the light of day. Because right now, like I said, you went from Ken O'Brien and, you went from Bill O'Brien having that coach and having that regime down there, which was a disaster. Now you're in an even better situation. And one thing I will hate to see happen, I would hate to see Myles Garrett's career get wasted, much like the last part of J.J. Watt's career. That's 2 careers that you've wasted. 2. You wasted the last part of J.J. Watt's career, and now you're wasting arguably one of the best defensive players we've seen since Derek Thomas's career because you can't hit the ground if you fell on it. That's sad.
Very unfortunate.